The setting. Arguably my favorite element of a narrative story. Many locations in the world have been used to bring narratives to life. These particular locations provide us with an idea that these fictional stories are actually true. Similarly to that of folklore, these fictional films that are shot on locations, in real life locations, are presented to us in a similar fashion as myths and tales. Stories that are told to present the history behind the locations, events that have happened there, and the location's impact on the surrounding community. This is the true nature of a film that is shot in particular locations. Films ranging from The Shawshank Redemption to even Star Wars that have been shot in real-world locations bring a sense of truthfulness behind each fictional story. With this ideology in mind, I began to think about popular filming locations. From my personal perspective, I am a huge Star Wars fan. Many locations like the Redwood Forest in California, as well as Death Valley, have been used to represent locations such as Tatooine and Endor in the original Star Wars trilogy. I have never been to these locations before in my life. However, they hold importance to me as they are part of something I love. Most of the time when we watch films, we always want to physically be a part of the story being presented in front of us. In an effort to go through this experience, I wanted to visit a few film locations that were relatively close to where I lived. I asked my friend Blaine if he had any experiences visiting film locations from some of his favorite films.
One of my favorite movies, RoboCop. So, yeah, RoboCop, while based in Detroit, and based all around Detroit and Detroit's crime rate, Detroit's deteriorating nature due to crime, it's not even filmed in Detroit. It's filmed in Dallas, Texas. So, as a kid, I grew up and I always wanted to, go to the locations that were filmed in Detroit. And, they even went as far as mocking or making a mock setup, making it look like there's this industrial area in Detroit called Zug Island. And they made this area look just like Zug Island, which probably isn't too hard to do. Insert industrial area here, but I was sold on the fact that was Detroit. And then not until I got older, until I became a senior in high school, probably somewhere in that realm where I started to do research, did I realize that RoboCop is nowhere near Detroit because it was all filmed in Dallas, Texas. And perhaps one of the best examples of that is if you were to look at Detroit's skyline and compare it to one of the opening shots of RoboCop, it's Dallas, Texas. And especially I actually drove through Dallas, Texas last year, and while I did get the nerd out, it still reminded me, I'm like, yep, it wasn't filmed in Detroit, it was filmed here. So it was a cool experience regardless, and plus going to Detroit, you get to feel like, I don't know, RoboCop, man. And they actually did it again in the RoboCop remake, where they didn't film in Detroit. I believe they filmed in Toronto, but they filmed sky shots of Detroit, and they superimposed the villain's headquarters right in the middle of Detroit. It looks legit too. You would think that the building's actually there, but it's just where Cobo Arena used to be. It was amazing. Like, honestly, I bought it. While the movie wasn't the best, it was viable.
I wanted to experience what it would be like to actually set foot in the settings featured in some of the most iconic films of all time. So Blaine and I set off to visit 3 iconic locations: the A Christmas Story house, the Ohio State Reformatory, and the Evans City Cemetery. Our first stop would be the A Christmas Story house in Cleveland, Ohio. After visiting the house, I sat down with the 2 general managers, Lauren Stubel and Michelle Albert, and I asked them a few questions about the house, its impact, and even their personal views on field production and what it's been like working there over the years.
It's kind of one of those things where you come in to work and every day's different, because it totally depends on the people you're talking to, the scenery that day, what kind of people you're talking to, I guess more or less stories you hear and things like that. So I love that realm of it, but I do love the movie. There's nothing. It's a classic. It makes me think of my dad when I watch it, things like that. So I like. There's sort of 2 different reasons why I came in, and I like them both.
I feel that when you're here on set and you're in a real neighborhood, it's so much more real. You have that feel of the neighborhood and the atmosphere. And on a set, it's just you don't have the ability to just film everything. You have to have what's there.
I think it's a little bit more controlled when it's inside in a studio as opposed to outside. It's more. I think you have more room to improvise and use the natural outdoor effects and things like that. Literally wind and sound, anything like that. It's more authentic. They wanted this house because it looked like the 30s and 40s when it was filmed. That's what they wanted. You have the steel mills in the back, which is not, you can't film just anywhere with having that, especially the scenery of it and the smokestacks and things like that, and just the cars on the street, anything. It's a neighborhood, so that's what they wanted.
That's exactly what they felt when they came down here. They felt like they had taken themselves right back to that time, and they didn't have to do anything. It was all here, so definitely.
So, what special aura do you think this place gives off to people who come and visit?
Oh,
Christmas all year round.
absolutely. And the joy of watching people reminisce their childhood, the stories of the ringer washer, and the ladies telling us they had this when they were married, and just really feeling like they're at home.
It's like a step back in time for a lot of people.
Absolutely.
And then, how different would this place be if not for the impact of the film that was shot here?
It certainly wouldn't be as big as it is today. I mean, I don't think anyone could have driven by and taken pictures and things like that. But it's all about the original structure of the house and coming in and restoring it to its natural glory and being able to walk around and interact and everything in the house. So I mean, it took a lot of work, of course, but I don't nearly think it would be as big and well known and renowned, if you will.
My personal story was I had come through on a tour in 2008 because I was infatuated with this movie, and before leaving I had asked one of the tour guides, how do I get a job here? They told me the following year they hire in October, and I was super persistent for at least a month of October trying to get somebody to give me an interview. So that glorious day I got the interview and was hired, was super excited, and I've been here since 2010. So absolutely cool job.
Being our first stop, I knew I wanted to visit the other two locations even more than I did prior to leaving for this trip. Our visit to the Ohio State Reformatory was probably the most impactful location out of the three. I mean, I was in awe the moment I turned into the driveway. After getting ready and meeting Dan Smith, the creative marketing director, he showed us around, pointing out some of the most iconic areas inside the reformatory. After a short tour, I sat down with Dan and asked him the same questions I had asked Lauren and Michelle at the A Christmas Story house.
We have a lot of people come for the movie, but we have a lot of people that don't, whether it's just for, they've heard about this old prison that they can, walk through, whether it's for paranormal activity or just the architecture itself. The building holds a lot of value. A lot of our volunteers and staff make it seem that it has a presence in itself. That we don't even need to do anything. You just let people come in and they can feel it. The history, the good and the bad, people can feel that when they walk in here. And also like the architecture, I mean, you can see this from miles away. You drive down the highway and it's got that castle-like structure and feel to it. And it's just one of those things that it's very hard not to drive up to and have some sort of raw emotion, basically.
Unfortunately, my microphone decided to give up a quarter of the way through the interview, and I hadn't realized this until after we had returned from our trip. So I decided to get a hold of Dan, and being the awesome guy that he was more than happy to send me voice memos of the questions being answered.
I think it's different for every person who comes, what they experience after seeing the film. One of the really interesting things about working here is it gives me the chance to see people interact with an actual movie site. I think a lot of times this means a lot more than just a stage or something like that. Even if you can go see that, to physically know that the actors from Shawshank were here. This is the actual building from the film, something you can go up and take pictures with and touch, and that is, connected with the community. I think means more to people when they come and visit it. It's fantastic for us to be able to see this on people's faces when they arrive and see how excited they are to be here. It never gets old. Yeah, personally, I think that with filming in this physical location, it makes the experience more real. It is real because this was a real prison, with the movie being that, knowing the connection it has means more to me, and I think it means more to a lot of people that come here to experience it, to be able to walk these hallways, feel what the actual prisoners felt, feel what the actors felt when they were filming, always makes it that much more important and concrete to my beliefs of why I think the film means so much to a lot of people as well. If it was done in a stage, I think you would be able to feel that a lot, and I don't think it would feel nearly as authentic. How I feel personally about field production versus studio production, I think truly there is a time and place for both. I like to think of, a film such as Avatar that is maybe, obviously a lot more tricky to think about, filming that in some real locations for certain elements. But let's take Shawshank, for example, Field of Dreams, even The Green Mile, from the same director of Shawshank. When you can see a real location, if you can ever have the opportunity to use a real location, I always recommend doing that. I think there's something a lot more authentic and real about it, and I think that you can tell on screen when you know they're really shooting somewhere compared to studio productions. This building has really had a life of its own, let's say. We've had the Cleveland Browns stop by, many actors, music videos have been shot here. People want to come here and shoot because of what this building looks like and the feeling you get upon arrival. We've even had people show up, taking a tour, who love Shawshank, thinking that Shawshank is a true story. They don't even know it's not a true story because of the realness of the locations using this prison. They believe that it is a true story, whether it was here or not. They think it's based on a true story, and then, of course, we always have to tell them it's not, and usually they're very disappointed, but it's this journey of hope, and the movie speaks universally, I think, to everyone. And being able to be in a location like this and allowing people for tours, I think, means so much. I've never worked somewhere and experienced something where so many people want to check in on Facebook and take photos and share it with their friends, and they're so excited to get here. And it really makes my job that much more enjoyable for sure. But I think that this film will live on beyond my lifetime. People always ask, what's the future of the building hold? What's the future of the film? And it's the same thing that I always say is it's timeless. It's like It's a Wonderful Life, or, one of these films that I think will just, continue to grow and have a life of its own. And that's what we're trying to do here at the Reformatory. We're trying to make this building be here for generations to come, so people can experience the events we do here. They can do photo shoots. They can experience what Shawshank meant to the community and what it means to them here. And I think it's a great place that everybody should visit.
That wind is creepy, man. Just how big it was.
Yeah.
I mean, it feels like it's from 1930s. It feels like it's still there.
And
like
one
I
of the
said,
most
living fossil.
One of the most recognizable parts from that movie is the fact that, like, the tile on the ground, the red and yellow like squares, and I was ready to see that. That was, for some reason, the floor pattern in there was what I was wanting to see when I walked in there. When I saw it, I was like, wow.
And that's what we got.
This is here.
It was legitimate. It didn't.
Exactly.
It felt. As opposed to some of the deterioration that's happened over the years. That place. It looks like they just filmed Shawshank yesterday.
Yeah.
It seriously feels as if they've reserved. It feels as if they've preserved Shawshank. It,
Yeah.
it feels like they just shot there. Tim Robbins was just walking down the hall handcuffed.
Huh?
It just
We saw him in the jail
it was a
cell.
surreal exactly. We've seen God, we've seen Tim Robbins, we've seen the Warden. It was an experience. I actually just thought about this. I don't know why this didn't pop up sooner. I went to Chicago as a junior in high school, and Chicago's where they filmed The Dark Knight. And I went to the actual street that, you know, the part when Batman and Joker are facing off, and Batman's coming at Joker on the Bat Pod, and Joker has the gun, he's saying, "Hit me," and the truck flips over and all that jazz. I didn't even realize it until I got there. I looked around, like, this looks really familiar. And I realized, I have goosebumps telling you this, man. I was there. I was there where frickin' Joker and Batman faced off, and that blew my mind as a junior in high school. I'm like, oh my god, they were right here. It was such a crazy experience, and to get that experience off of just something as simple as going to visit a location, it's every nerd's fantasy.
Yeah. And see, that's another thing too. Like you didn't even realize you were there.
No.
But you were like, this is real. I'm getting something from this. Exactly how we were when we were approaching the cemetery. When we went around that corner and we went up that driveway.
Here in Evans City, there it is. That's the road they went up, dude.
You and I'm sure you felt the same way, but my stomach sank.
It did.
And I was freaking out. That's why I told you to start rolling, because I could not believe what was going on.
Yeah, Evans City is a cemetery in some random town in Pennsylvania.
And we were there alone.
And we were there alone, and it was raining, it was scary, it was dark, and it was scary.
The more I go up, the more creeped out I'm getting.
Oh, dude.
Dude, I want to go home.
This is getting weird.
I don't want someone to chase me. I hope they don't have a brick with them. This is like, oof. I don't even like, the trees aren't making it much better either. Evans City was very interesting because here we didn't have a guide. Blaine and I were alone, and yes, we were very freaked out. Soon after arriving, we made it our goal to find the Blair tombstone used in the film, and after searching for a while, we finally found it. What was interesting, though, was that the tombstone had pennies all over it. I had a feeling I knew exactly why they were there, and being the superstitious ones, Blaine and I placed our own pennies on the tombstone, prior to recording the name of the tombstone on camera.
For Night of the Living Dead, I didn't have any idea what to expect. I actually didn't expect to get scared at all. I didn't think one other cemetery was going to be any different.
Mm-hmm.
But wow, did our opinions change on that one. Specifically mine.
Although the Ohio State Reformatory was the most impactful, I felt so strange while visiting the cemetery. And after a while, I actually began to get paranoid. I knew that whatever I was feeling was actually the result of the film and the narrative that George Romero created, using this cemetery as his first setting. Let's just say we didn't end up staying here as long as we stayed at the other two locations. And it was definitely an experience I would never soon forget.
All of our experiences at Christmas Story House in Cleveland, or Evans City, Pennsylvania Cemetery, or even Ohio State Reformatory in Mansfield, Ohio, really, it didn't teach me the importance of field production, but it definitely proved to me that it's legitimate.
Yeah.
It brings it that more authentic feel. And
Yeah.
when I watch RoboCop, while I do love it, it's a nostalgic 5 out of 5 favorite for me. I don't know. I still look back at it and I go, yep, you were filmed in Dallas, Texas. After visiting these 3 locations, I find myself wanting to visit even more. It's hard for me to explain the experiences I had of these locations to others. I sometimes find it all ineffable. Each experience I had felt nothing short of a sacred experience that I would never soon forget. So in a sense, I guess that's the true magic behind the location. Aside from that, we're good to go.
So, As kind of like a side question, do you think this place is haunted, or is it haunted?
You know, I was very skeptical initially, and I'm still not really the best judge of that. I've got to do some of those hunts. They're actually having a lot of our staff utilize and be at those more than what we used to be. I don't question if its existence is real now. I haven't seen any like shadow figures or things like that, but doors have slammed that take multiple people. We've been in places where there's not been other people in the building, and there's been footsteps, things like that. So I don't question it like I used to.
Okay.
That's the easy answer for sure.
I was gonna say, because we were over in this office over here,
Yeah.
and like the wind hits the windows, and it shows like dum 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 dum, and we thought it was like someone above us. We're like, whoa, this is creepy.
Man, it definitely is creepy. It used to bother me a lot more than what it does now. It's kind of like
It's like
part of work, you know what I mean? Like if I did hear a voice like get out, I just whatever, you know what I mean? Because I've heard footage from other people or seen things, you know what I mean? Where it's not, you know what I mean? It's just kind of part of the gig here. You kind of have to expect when you walk in, like as you're a staff member, that you know something's going to happen to you eventually. So if you respect it though, I think for the most part you're fine.
Did you see the lights go off just now?
That's
That's cute.
No.